damn it! I spilled coffee all over the f***ing floor. It's gonna take me weeks to clean this up. Oh my god, we're spending 3 goddamn months on this video that no one's gonna watch. Gives a about these games anyway.
What's up guys, we're playing PC games from my childhood and this is the third part of that series. If you haven't seen those first 2 parts, you can go ahead and watch them later, because you can pretty much watch these out of order. But anyway, again, this is the last part and we're moving on to the stack and the mystery case. Alright, let's get back into the fray, starting with the... Here's an oddity among the collection, Brother Bear on PC. Yeah, one of the last 2D Disney movies, and an oft-forgotten one at that. I do remember seeing it in theaters, but that was a long time ago. And I doubt I'll be refreshed on what the hell happened there, cause this is another No Wonder game. This makes a lot of sense though, cause I remember the game leaving a big impression on me in a similar manner to the Harry Potter games. So let's see if it holds up just as well. Wait, that's it? Alright, so this is another 3D platformer where you play as the Brother Bear as he and the annoying little Brother Bear go on a journey to reach where the light touches the ground so Brother Bear can turn back into a human. It's unpolished in its platforming, but it does the job, and it's at least not tank control this time. There's also this mechanic where it shifts to the Brother Bear on occasion as he catches up to the area you just went through, which is admittedly kinda neat. Less neat is the sound design, which you need only watch the first cutscene to understand why that stinks.
So anyway, his older brother Sitka held off the bear while his 2 brothers got up, but then the ice cracked and both Sitka and the bear fell. Well, now you ready? Because this is...
Hold on, give me a second.
The bear was the only one who came back out again.
This is a sad story, eh?
Also, like with the Harry Potter games, there are collectibles, but there's not really much of a point to it besides these context-sensitive power-ups. This isn't a big old explorative world like Harry Potter 2, it's very, very linear. Not like the game would have any room for it though, because there are only 3 actual levels, 2 minigame sections, and multiple variations of the same boss fight, which in total amounts to 1 hour and 20 minutes of gameplay. Now, I'm not against games being super short, so long as they do a lot in the time that it takes to complete them. Portal, for example, is one of my favorite games of all time. It's only 3 hours long and has everything it needs to have in that amount of time. Now, the first Harry Potter game can be completed in that amount of time as well, and I found it adequately fulfilling. Brother Bear felt like it had just begun by the time the credits rolled. Feels like they kinda rushed this thing a bit. From what I can tell, either Disney didn't give No Wonder a good enough budget for this game, they forced them to craft this out in time for the film, or nobody cared and they just made a shitty license game to cash in on it. Whatever the case, it's sad to know that 1% of my childhood was a lie by finding out this thing was kinda trash. I'll still take it over anything that Oz put their hands on.
I went to college!
Next up is Atlantis, The Lost Empire, The Lost Games. Wow, man, that's a really great title. And Wonder's joy, it's another fucking minigame collection in place of an actual game centering around another 2D Disney film. One that I think is a bit more fondly remembered than Brother. But again, I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm not sure. So it starts out promising enough. Hell, probably even more so, because this animation is really, really good. Great even. It's really fluid, and I don't see any repeating motions or anything like that. God, I can't believe they got this kind of quality for a freaking Activity Center game. Speaking of which, once we get to that content, things go downhill quickly. I sampled 3 of the minigames it offers. One has you navigate an extremely slow submarine while fighting against those dangerous underwater currents. Another has you move an airplane to collect these glowing stones and fit them back into the statue, which isn't interesting whatsoever. And the last one has you navigate a bunch of tanks through a big mine that's covered in hazards. It has a semi-isometric perspective and is set up to be some kind of puzzly experience, so you'd think it would be kind of interesting, but I cleared the first 2 levels without encountering any hazards whatsoever, and I just gave up there. To those who worked on this animation, I'm sorry, but it was wasted. So since those first two were short and disappointing, let's move on to something that's even shorter and just as disappointing, Freddi Fish 3, oops, I spoiled my opinion before I even put the disc in. Yeah, that's the actual subtitle, don't question it. In the previous two parts, we covered the first two Freddi Fish games, which have held up far better than any other series in this niche, at least compared to the other stuff we played. However, for as much as I've grown to really appreciate those two, it's the third game in the series I have the most nostalgia for. Not only was it my first Freddi Fish experience, it was probably my introduction to point-and-click adventure games. At the start of the path that led to my love for Phoenix Wright, Hotel Dusk, the Zero Escape series, Telltale's The Walking Dead, and more recently, AI The Somnium Files, was Freddi Fish 3. I owe so much to it for helping shape the epic gamer I like to think I've become. So it pains me to say that this is the least best of the three games. Let me stress that FF3 is not a bad game. In fact, I think the premise is probably my favorite of the Freddi Fish games I have. Yeah, that's a good sell. Freddy and Luther have traveled to a different part of the ocean for summer vacation to partake in the Founders Day Festival. But the conch used to signal the start of it got jacked and Freddy's uncle was framed for the crime. Now it's up to the duo to find the conch shell, as well as the 3 golden pipes that go with it so that the festival can be saved. Along the way, you'll meet a host of characters that'll help you in your journey, but one of them could also be the true thief, so be wary of them. It's mystery tinged, and even though it's so basic I probably could have come up with that when I was 8, it's completely up my alley. So why am I not that into it? Well, like with the last two games, Freddi Fish 3 is broken up into 3 distinct parts. First up, you have to find all the golden pipes and complete whatever puzzles you encounter along the way. The location of these pipes is randomized for each game, and in order to, I assume, prevent collecting these pipes from getting repetitive, the game world is far smaller than Freddi Fish Uno and Dos. However, a lot of the puzzles are subsequently far more lengthy, and they involve going back and forth through multiple areas to find and trade items and whatnot, so all the smaller size does is make the backtracking more apparent and exploring this world, ironically, more repetitive. For as annoying as that could be previously, there was just something neat about the sprawling design of their respective worlds that I wouldn't say is missing here, but just isn't as compelling. After finding the pipes, Freddy's Uncle Sea Dog's nose picks up the scent of the criminal and leads the two fish to an ancient temple. They spot the culprit, but after chasing them inside, Luther's dumb, greedy ass gets himself trapped in a cage, so you'll have to rescue him before you leave. This is where my disappointment with the game truly stems. The last two did have their own final areas, but they provided payoff for gathering all the clues or trap parts in a satisfying way. Here, Freddy's just kind of bumbling through this temple to get a gem that's a similar color to this other gem so you can get the key to Luther's cage, and unless you're hitting that skip button like there's no tomorrow, it's slow and dull. The only randomized thing here is the color of the gem, and that just changes which of the 3 rooms you'll need to go in. Thanks. With that green-ass fish causing no more trouble, the pair find that the crook was nice enough to leave behind a clue to their identity. So naturally, the final part involves fingering them. Oh, shut up. We present the randomized clue to point out the randomized culprit and learn their randomized motives for stealing the randomized conch shell. It's like,
You stole
The conch shell.
No. You stupid. They're not. What's
This fucking toothbrush.
Ouch! Oh no?
You stupid.
I guess this is the real payoff, but I don't know, the build-up could have been better. I did get a kick out of the Law & Order style Where Are They Now section at the end though. And that's the thing, I still really like Freddi Fish 3. It's still got the charm, it's still got the endearing characters, and it still looks really good. I just don't think the structure is as strong as the last two, and I also don't think it has as much replay value either. Which basically means I hate it and I never want to play it again for the rest of my life. I haven't played 4 and 5, but I'm gonna tentatively say the series peaked with 2. I think I underplayed just how much I really liked that one, the last part. So let's discuss over that instead. Okay, Freddi Fish 2. Did someone say, eh? Well, I'd say it's time for backyard hockey. I'm so tired. So having done kid-friendly versions of 4 of the major sports that people care about, and multiple updates to those games since, hockey is the most logical step forward from that. And with this, the changes to the series are more prominent than ever. Not only have the pre-rendered graphics returned, the 2D models received an overhaul and have been smoothed out. I don't know, they look okay, but the old designs were already great. Why they felt the need to change them now, I'm not sure. Regardless of any visual changes, the spirit of backyard sports is still fully intact. Once again, we have a very simplified version of whatever particular sport we'd be playing here. So simple, all you need is the mouse to control it, and if you know how hockey works on the most basic level, you're good to go. So as with the other backyard sports games we've covered here, I played a single match, and immediately concluded that this is easily the easiest out of all the games in the series I own. At first I had a bit of trouble adjusting to the low-ass frame rate and slippery movement, intentionally so, but within a minute I was slapping that puck into the net like there was nobody guarding it. As a result though, this is the least fun I've had with the backyard sports games I own. It just dragged on and on and on, goal after goal, Zamboni after Zamboni. Worst of all, you can't even get into fights. It's totally inappropriate for the series, but that's one of the most essential aspects of professional hockey, isn't it? I personally would have loved to get the chance to beat down Reese Witherspoon or Worthington or whatever that pretentious fuck's name was. So yeah, I can't see myself doing a full season of hockey here. One game was good enough. These fucking hosers, don't know how to design shit. That's why all their fucking games have been sucking since, eh? Yeah, no. And next we have... Ooh. Boggle?
Boggle.
Boggle?
Boggle.
Boggle?
Boggle.
It doesn't work.
You're a loser!
Oh yay, another Scooby-Doo game. Scooby-Doo Case File 1, The Glowing Bugman. That's another great title. And if I recall, this is even more minigame focused than the other Scooby-Doo adventure games, so this will be exciting. I think I know what name I'll put down. iCup is on the case, huh? Okay, that was weird. Let's try that again. iCup is on the... Are you kidding me? Well, this is another bust. I tried every method I could think of to start this game, and every time I do, it kicks me out. I guess it doesn't like my very clever and humorous character name. And this is the last Learning Company game, so let's just lay this down. Learning Company games are cursed. Even if it did work, I'd probably just be bombarded with more creepy character designs and pointless monotony. Maybe kids today could still get a kick out of them, but attention span seems to be degrading over the years, so probably not. Great, I sound like a fucking boomer now. Up next is something that I hope doesn't continue this streak, Monster Inc. Scare Island. It doesn't have Activity Center tacked on there, so it's immediately 40 times more interesting. It also goes by Screen Team, and according to the internet, was only released in the US on the PS1 with other versions available, yet there's still an ESRB rating on this thing, so someone's lying and it ain't me. It is kind of funny to think of it as a bootleg PAL copy though, because that would at least explain why I can't install it. Oh, I tried a bajillion times like with all the other games I couldn't install, and it gets to the point where it seems like it'll go through, but then it tries to install this codec, and after that, nothing. No error, no your install has finished, just this background. You know what? Fuck this piece of shit. I said it was gonna break this streak, so let's just look at the PS1 version. It's the exact same thing, it just looks like a PS1 game. So like I said, this is a 3D platformer in the same vein as those mascot platformers that were popular during this time, like Banjo-Kazooie, or Spyro, or Crash, or Gex, or Glover, and developed by Artificial Mind and Movement, who also go by Behavior Interactive. These guys were responsible for a great chunk of licensed games during the 2000s before making original titles like Wet and Naughty Bear, failing spectacularly, rebranding as Behavior Interactive again at the start of the 2010s, and making barely anything of note since then, except maybe Dead by Daylight. Anyway, this was marketed as a prequel to Monsters Inc. It was even released days before the film would be out in theaters. It has you play as either Mike or Sully, going around doing the 3D platforming thing while scaring a bunch of child robots. Level design is decent, and there's just enough motivation to collect shit or go for 100%, at least for me, and the scaring part is a novel concept. Unfortunately, it's lacking in execution, as it's a matter of gathering these scare energy containers to raise your scare threshold, and the actual scaring involves walking up to a robot and mashing whatever button is displayed on the scarometer, and it's as monotonous as it sounds. Not to mention frustrating. Hope you like being sneaked up on by enemies, cause they can interrupt your scaring session. I was also not a fan of the jump here. See, the first jump is a glorified short hop, and the second jump is a long distance lunge. Put them both together, and what do you get? Mike can float a bit after the second jump though, so that helps a little bit. It's almost like the devs knew it was too awkward to work by itself. The game also includes super compressed cutscenes from the film that play after reaching certain points of progression, but they don't complement the gameplay or plot in any significant way. Cause the plot here, what little of it there is, ain't based on the film, so they merely serve as distractions or hell, advertisements. I mean, again, I love the film anyway, so it's welcome here, just feels kinda token. It's also pretty short, sitting at only 12 levels and 3 racing segments. 100% in about 5 hours, so not as bad as Brother Bear, but still. It did get put on PSN more than a decade later, so it must have some fans. And I can't say it didn't hook me, cause... yeah. But at the end of the day, it's an average licensed platformer that doesn't do much beyond the bare minimum. Whoa, dude, time for another skateboarding Okay, I'm sorry, I'll stop that. This is the last backyard sports game I own, and at first it seems like a bit of an odd choice. But those Tony Hawk games, man, they were moneymakers. Oh boy, renderware. Everyone from Sonic Team to Rockstar North was using this engine, weren't they? I didn't play too much of this thing back then. I only remember watching my brother tinker with it and fail horribly. So all I'm hoping for it is that it's more interesting than goofy skateboarding. And that wish is immediately granted, as there's an actual intro cutscene detailing an actual plot. The intro lays out said plot and involves the classic kids doing some epic skateboarding before the kid version of,
Oh boy, it was close. Tony Hawk having to duck under Andy that time.
Oh yeah, Andy McDonald. Yeah, of course I know him. Yeah, he did those tricks, man. Those epic tricks. Anyway, he shows up to tell them that their skate park sucks ass and they can get a better one by participating in the Backyard Skate Tour. They have to go around the neighborhood and help a bunch of people out to earn stamps. If they collect enough stamps, they can challenge the local boss skater. If they beat the boss skater, their sponsor will help fund the ultimate skate park. Then they gotta do that 2 more times and they'll get the ultimate skate park. Yeah, it's a basic ass plot, but at least there's an actual purpose to this nonsense and we're not bumming around the beach for funsies. Taking control of Mr. MacDindle, we do exactly what he described 5 seconds ago. There's this open world full of backyard kids and other kids where we take missions from them, beat them, and get stamps to fill out our collection book, all while doing sick tricks. It's alright. It controls kind of loosely. Pulling off tricks is a bit of a multi-button nightmare, but it works. The missions themselves vary from tutorials, to delivering papers, to racing a remote-controlled car, to playing red light, green light. Yeah, I'll give it a C+. But as you can probably tell, I really wasn't that hooked by backyard skateboarding. I only played up to the first boss skater, good old shy-ass Ricky Nelson, just to see what kind of challenge he had for me. Was I gonna race against him, do a trick points competition, ollie over a 747? Nope, all he wanted me to do was perform some specific tricks within a certain amount of time, and that was enough to get him on the team. Okay, I know he's supposed to be a pushover, but that didn't have to transfer over to gameplay. And that's all the backyard sports games I have. Yeah, I may as well rank them. Baseball, football, soccer, basketball, skateboarding, hockey. And football was a disappointment in my eyes, so that's how large the quality margin is for these games. I did take a look at some of the newer editions of these sports from around the 2000s up until now, and the series was on pretty much a downwards trajectory from backyard baseball. Oh my god, the ball is pre-rendered. Oh my god, so are the kids when it switches to the outfield. That's just jarring. Oh my god, it's spread to other games in the series. This is fugly. Oh my god, Backyard Football 2002 actually looks somewhat better than the first one. Oh my god, never mind. Oh my god, this is what Backyard Baseball looks like now. How the mighty have fallen. Ah, I spy. One of the more timeless activities us kids experience in the aughts. I'm pretty sure I still have a few of those books lying up in the attic somewhere, but they're probably really old and worn out, and I also don't have an attic. Anyway, these books were always fun to go through, and they're an excellent format for a host of video games. So much so, there have been countless amounts of them. The hidden object puzzle genre has been going on for years now, and while they're not usually regarded as anything more than that, I keep seeing them pop up during my frequent ESRB searches, so someone must be playing them. I Spy Fantasy isn't that much different from any other hidden object game, but it's obviously targeted towards a much younger audience. what it has to offer are 3 adventures based in fantasy elements, namely space, underwater, and medieval times. For my play session, I opted for underwater because I wanted to see if it would have a horrible rendition of Under the Sea, and instead I was greeted with several I Spy puzzles where you do the I Spy thing and find objects as described in the provided couplets, after which you obtain a single book page that will go towards finding some big treasure later on. Yep, it couldn't get any more childish than this. Well, let's just blow through this one, guys. I can't imagine it'd be that difficult. Where the fuck is that heart? Been searching on this ship forever. Where is it? Okay, yeah. This also still clicks with me. You could be the smartest person on the planet and think you're on top of the world, but I guarantee you do one of these, you'll be doing these for days, and eventually, you'll get stuck on one tiny little object like everyone else has. While the puzzle environments here are much cleaner than they are in the books, finding everything can be one hell of a challenge. Beyond that, the presentation is all made up of pre-rendered visuals, but there's a certain charm to it in the same vein as something like stop-motion animation. It is crude, but it's still very nice to look at. So yeah, this is a solid puzzle game. I might even check out some of the other stories one of these decades. Hey, look, it's Operation. It's another board game. It's Operation. I'm gonna commit malpractice. It's Operation. It doesn't work. It's Operation. Free AOL hours. Fuck you. Okay, one last Harry Potter game to check out. Harry Potter Quidditch World Cup. This is a side entry based off the fictional sport of the same name that the series occasionally uses to pad out the runtime. Showcase Harry overcoming his struggles to escape the shadow of his father, or something like that. Yeah. Imagine hockey, or lacrosse, or football, depending on which country you're in, but if each goal were worth 10 points, there were 2 designated players that could legally beat the shit out of you, and there was another designated player thrown in at a certain point in the game that whoever tackles would receive a shit ton of points for their team, and more often than not, win the match. Despite being a fictional sport from a fictional wizard series, it did grow to an actual sport. I distinctly remember my alma mater having a Quidditch club, and I'd sometimes catch them in action on my way to class. Running around on brooms, wearing goggles, and looking like they were having a grand old time. I never associated with that crowd. This is about the closest I'll ever get to that, and spoilers, it didn't do a good job of convincing me I was missing out. First impressions were generally, awkward movements, weird faces, Harry Potter, PC, yep, it's another No Wonder title. But it turns out it was actually developed by EA UK, i.e. EA Brightlight, who had been developing the console versions of the Harry Potter games up to this point, and since then. I suppose it's a nice change of pace considering it looks far better than either of the 2 Harry Potter games we've looked at previously, so maybe this time the gameplay will be even more engaging. And maybe Dad will come home tomorrow with the gallon of milk he went to get 5 years ago. So I get to play as any of the 4 Hogwarts houses. I opted for Slytherin because honestly, fuck that entitled boy who lived bitch. And then played a few Quidditch matches against the other houses. Despite how complex Quidditch sounds and looks, especially with the tutorials and variety of controls at your disposal, each match boiled down to the same exact thing. You'll throw the quaffle through the hoops 50 times until the snitch comes out, and well, it doesn't matter if you catch it or not, because you probably won the match by then. Yes, the AI are basically the Cincinnati Bengals. They suck. The only times they managed to score on me were when they used the stupid special move that automatically gives them points, or when I stepped away to take a piss after scoring 200 points on them. Because of this, matches drag on and 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 on. There's little strategy and little fun to be had. After winning the House Cup and the biggest blowout since Vietnam, Slytherin moved on to the World Cup where they represented a country's prospective Quidditch team. Okay then. I picked the USA because honestly fuck those entitled British bitches. And pray to the Lord that my opponent would actually put up a fight here and I wouldn't have to slog through matches collecting wizard cards just to unlock higher difficulties.
He grabs the quaffle, shoots it, grabs it, needing to keep hold of the quaffle.
Okay, next up is... well, at least this is more blatant. I can't wait to think up a storm here. Oh, yeah, that's nice. Let's just search through the files here just in case, because note the plural wording in the title. There are likely multiple thinking games here, so one of them is bound to work, assuming they're separate install files. Oh hey, here's one, Free Cell. It's one of the 59 million variations on Solitaire, and kinda looks like the standard version that would come with Windows XP. But hey, it runs. If only I knew how to play it. Yeah, screw this, let's just play regular Solitaire. That's nice. So yeah, overall, thinking games gets a B-. Ugh, talk about obscure, but this one. Titanic, Adventure Out of Time. Ooh, another double discer. Oh, what is this? Wait, are these the codes? Mama did mention something about secret codes. I wonder what they mean. Oh, never mind, it's just notes about the game. It might be useful later anyway. This is an adventure game by Cyberflix, a company that lasted 5 years in the mid-90s making these kinds of games. And this was the one that people seem to vaguely recall, so Night Dive re-released it on Steam a while back. Good thing too, cause... yeah. You play as a British spy on a secret mission to retrieve some ancient stolen book and painting and other things to prevent the many horrific wars that would follow the Titanic sinking. Yeah, the sinking is pretty much guaranteed here and you can't do shit about that, lol. The big selling point, however, is how the team recreated the entire ship accurately, and right off the bat, I will hand it to them, they did a bang-up job with that. Sure, it's not the highest quality recreation, and there is a lot of motion blur, but it looks good. So much detail in the architecture and floor plan, it's gorgeous. You know what it reminds me of more than a big old Unsinkable though? 999. Yeah, even referencing 999 again, who would have thought? That game takes place on a ship that's eerily similar to the Titanic, and all those environments were pre-rendered as well. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it had taken some inspiration from Adventures Out of Time, or at least it used the same references. Regardless of the game being played though, both feature an underlying tension akin to something out of a horror game. Everything's so claustrophobic and centered, like something will jump out at any moment without... Speaking of horror, throughout the game you'll interact with a large cast of passengers that will aid or hinder you in your mission. The butler, the lady, the old lady, your partner, the prick's wife, the French prick, the German prick, the prick who knows this ship about to get sunk, the prick that shoots you, and your local next door neighbor who's a Jehovah's Witness. And I don't know if it's seasickness or bad lighting, but they look and move a little weird, don't they? Well, this is the magic of the Dream Factory engine at work. In addition to running the pre-rendered environments you see here, this engine allowed the developers to combine photos of the actors in sequence to create mouth movements and body animation without having to resort to FMVs or QuickTime, which for something of this size in terms of dialogue and presentation was necessary in order to save space. The result is this weird mishmash of movements that might look right from a distance, but upon closer inspection collapses into uncanniness. And yet I kinda love it. It's weirdly effective in pulling off the unsettling undertones of exploring a ship that's gonna be in the water within 4 freaking hours. And while that's probably unintentional, the quirkiness of it all is so unique and interesting to watch. Anytime someone raises an eyebrow or looks the other way draws me into their conversation more than an FMV ever could. It's certainly a love it or hate it style, and some of the characters just look straight up goofy. But for the most part, it works for me. Honestly, the closest thing I can think of in terms of comparing this style is Harvester. Though that's far from an apt comparison, as A, that thing actually does have FMVs, and B, yeah, you don't see that happening on the Titanic. As for the actors themselves, I'm not as inclined to praise that aspect as much.
Everyone's here. The Astors, the George Wideners, the Countess of Roths, such a wonderful girl. The Strausses, I saw them on D-Deck tonight. The Ryersons, the Henry Harpers. I could just go on and ships are very advanced. I was just saying my dear friends Carters. The Reno, Carter, me, the Carter,
From what I've researched, most of them have only done this game and nothing else. With the exception of this lift attendant fellow who's worked as a VFX artist for a multitude of animated series since then, like Star Wars Clone Wars, Futurama, and Disenchantment.
I'm the lift attendant, and you'll not find one better at taking you where you want to go. Where to?
and it's probably for the best. Really though, the performances themselves are fine. They're suitable. The problem comes in with the accents, as the characters are from various regions and these actors are, I assume at least, mostly of American descent. So there are multiple occasions of accents slipping either subtly or blatantly.
I told him not to, told him I'd pay his ticket, but he was too proud. Such a tragedy about his family. They were with my mother's people.
And it's pretty distracting. Like, Butler Guy, I love you, man. I know you got my back throughout this voyage, but you can't convince me you're not some dude bro trying to imitate Poirot.
Lastly, you may always find me by returning to your cabin, C-73, and ringing the bell to the right of the door.
The solution, it becomes inevitable. I accept.
Also, this dude is supposed to be an affluent business person trying to prevent a scandal, and yet he sounds like one of the voiceovers in America's Test Kitchen for the DS.
Government officials, friends of mine, told me a bureau agent was on board. I found you through Mrs. Cashmore, a preposterous woman, but she does have an eye for accomplishment.
Heat 2 teaspoons of the oil in the now empty skillet over medium-high heat until just smoking. Add the broccoli.
I mean, I'm not wrong, am I? All that said, I don't think I would have been able to tolerate either of these aspects if the writing wasn't so damn good. Every conversation I had with these characters was full of wonderfully written dialogue and humor. It made this doomed ship and the people on it so absorbing and engaging, even if some of it does lean a little hard on tell don't show. That said, there is an unfortunate blemish with this version, not sure if it's in the other ones. More often than not, whenever the person you're speaking with reaches the end of a sentence, they either cut off the last word and start a new one, or just rush into it without a pause.
Oh my, I didn't mean to insult.
Can't hold a thought.
Dreadfully large place, America.
Brain like as if
all that space and all those immigrants trying to fill it up.
That's far more distracting than any poor accent could ever be. Even with how flawed this game was, I was still hooked. And I wanted to get one ending before I finished my assessment. And a mechanic I found quite interesting was how it kept time. It would not progress until after important moments occurred, and then it immediately switched to real time as soon as the Titanic started sinking. I mean, it makes sense. I doubt those poor souls were able to quick save back then to prevent themselves from fucking up. But yeah, I eventually did reach an ending. It didn't end well. How unfortunate. I'll remember to use a guide the next time I go through this. Pretty sure they had those a century ago. Okay, next up is another demo CD. This one from Puffs. It has 3 games on it based off popular Nick shows at the time: SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Bob, and Jimmy Bob. The SpongeBob one worked, but we've already talked about it. The Fairly Odd Bob one did install, but you can try opening up with admin credentials all damn day, it won't run. If I remember correctly, it was just another stupid minigame collection based off episodes from the show, so I doubt I would have gotten much out of it anyway. Jimmy Bob vs. Negabob was a little weird. Originally it wouldn't install, so I gave up on it, but then I tried again a little while later while editing the last part, and lo and behold, it went through. So that's nice and all, but considering it's another all game, the excitement can only extend so far. Let's just see how much of a shitfest this is. Well, first off, it looks about the same, just with no flickering. But there's actual character animation here, so it looks like Breath of the Wild by comparison. The plot here is quite self-explanatory, if you read the title, and after fake Jimmy the Nut kidnaps Mrs. the Fowl, you control the real Jimmy the Jimmy. You can use either the mouse or the arrow keys to perform that, but anyone who does the former is certified insane. It's 10 controls, but it gets the job done, and there's far more platforming than what was in the movie game. There's also a ton of big-ass pre-rendered collectibles and invention parts that, when combined, give you access to cool power-ups later on the level, and yes, it's very shallow, very simple, honestly very shoddy, but if the Harry Potter games taught me anything, just give me a dumb easy game with a bunch of collectible items and I'll eat that shit up. This is even dummy easier than HP though, no combat, extremely light puzzle solving. It's probably more comparable to Tomb Raider if the games were all about environmental platforming and secrets, which I'd be all for as the combat in those games were horrible. Another thing those games had in common though was how it's so obvious we're in a box. Tomb Raider at least took place mostly in temples, caves, and tombs and used darkness in other areas, but here, they're actually trying to convince me that we're in a vast desert. A joke. I laugh. Despite that, the demo did what any demo should set out to do: impress me. And it's easily the best thing that Awe has done. Which makes why they went the Activity Center route with the SpongeBob games all the more confusing. If I ever find the full game in an antique shop or some other equivalent, I'll consider playing the whole game, but this will suffice for now. Oh man, it's Pac-Boy. What a strange little game we have here, I'm sure none of you have seen before. Pac-Man is a classic series to be sure, but I've always viewed it as one that peaked in its arcade days and isn't fondly remembered for most of its other entries, with maybe the exception of the World Series. Oh, and Pac-Man 2, of course. I can't really blame anyone, because there aren't that many standouts, but if one were to look closer into the history of these games, they'd notice quite a few anomalies. Pac-Man has always been a Namco property, or Bandai Namco, or Namco Bandai, or whatever the hell they're called now, and while they've maintained control for years, if not decades now, back then things were a bit more loose. Did you know, for example, that for the longest time Ms. Pac-Man actually wasn't a Namco property, but a Midway one? And there was another game, Pac-in-Time, that's more or less a reskin of an existing game not made by Namco, Fury of the Furries. Oh. Essentially, it wasn't uncommon for Namco to merely give their blessing on certain Pac-Man games and such, and that's why Adventures in Time is published by Hasbro Interactive and developed by two complete nobodies. All that said, this thing is not that different from the original arcade game, which most people are familiar with. You play as the Pac-Man, go around eating up the pellets and running away from the ghosts. Simple as that, but it's far from just being a mere remake, more like an expansion of ideas, especially now that everything is in 3 dimensions. The mazes start out simple enough, with its straightforward paths and warp areas and fruits to collect, but as it goes on, it introduces more trickier elements. The terrain can get a bit slopey at points, which slow or speed up Pac-Man, and there are also different levels of elevation, like bridges and clay houses that you can climb up using ladders or whatever. Sometimes the maze will just be one big spear or cube, and this can limit Pac-Man's field of view or threaten his life as he clings to the side at 90 degrees in search of yellow pellet goodness. Also, as the title implies, Pac-Man is going through various time periods while chomping on them pellets. So not only do the ghosts conform to these themes throughout the game, environmental hazards pop up here and there to ruin Pac-Man's day as well. And one last new addition, Pac-Man can now jump. It's a very clunky jump that requires precise timing, but a jump nonetheless. There was clearly a lot of care and effort put into this game, and I'd say it all works quite well. It hits all the right spots that the original Pac-Man did, and all the new elements add up to one of the better Pac-Man games in the series. Which really isn't saying much, because Pac-Man World 2 was one of the better games in the series, and that thing is kind of a mess. This is still a good game as well, but there are some problems. Some big problems. For one, the 2 camera angles on offer here are, let's just say, not ideal. One follows Pac-Man directly, and while you do get a better view of things close up, hazards can suddenly creep up on the poor guy without warning, so you can't really plan a route as one would normally do with Pac-Man. Luckily, there still is the classic bird's eye view option, and while this does fix those previous issues I mentioned, it just looks off in 3D, especially with the more 3D elements like the upper level floors and jumping aspects I mentioned earlier. There are also some minigames that take place in between certain levels, and they're more often than not just kinda uninteresting, or really hard to figure out. Like this gallery shooting minigame. I have no idea how to control it, I have no idea where to aim and how to shoot, I have no idea how to do this shit, and the hits barely register anyway, so I end up failing and I can't get that stuffed Blinky that my daughter wants. The game isn't that generous with lives as well. My favorite game mechanic. And like with the original Pac-Man, it's really easy to mess up and lose one. There is a save system, but that's a double-edged sword. True, this does mean you don't have to go all the way back to the beginning if you get a game over, but you can only save at certain points in the game, and when you do die, you have to go back to the previous save, which forces you to redo any levels that you completed up until then, and with how easy it is to lose a life, that's more than likely going to happen, resulting in a never-ending loop until you get to the next save point and it starts again, and the only real way to get in a better position is to start the game all over again with all your lives, and ooh, it has 1080p resolution. Well, that's really all I need to see here, moving on. Man, we started out with some duds, but now we got a quality streak going. Maybe we can keep this, Well, it was inevitable. And what a surprise. It's made by Awe. That explains a lot. As you can probably guess, the Spider-Man 2 Activity Center game is yet another cheap minigame collection. And it's probably the cheapest of the cheap. They all center around things Spider-Man does, things that were from the Spider-Man 2 film, or just banal crap Peter Parker does in his spare time, and every single one of them is a guaranteed insomnia cure. There isn't even a story this time around to lazily tie all these games together, which is strange because it's not like they had to make one of their own. Apparently the game turned out like this because all blew all their money getting Tobey Maguire to record new dialogue. And based on his performance, I doubt they had a large budget to begin with.
This certificate is locked. Keep playing to unlock more rewards.
Having braved through a bunch of similar activity centers and other dumb cheap minigame collections and coming out quite traumatized and furious, you'd probably think I'd have a similar reaction here. But at this point, I'm just tired. This is too pathetic to be angry at. So dull and lame that it only serves to be mocked by people on the internet. Like so. Also, considering that the Activity Center trend had pretty much died down by this point, I like to think this was the nail in the coffin for that trend altogether. Good riddance. Alright, that's pretty much all the games with cases, and now let's take a look at the ones without cases, housed in the mysterious CD pack. I've been very curious about this one ever since we started, and I bet you have been too. Well, enough bitch slapping, let's see what we got. JumpStart Typing. Yeah, I had a feeling this would have some educational crap. Well, let's give it a shot. Okay, it installed with no issue, so let's try running it, and... nothing. Absolutely nothing. Okay, let's turn the page here and hope for the best. Ooh! I could squeeze in one last game show game. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Jesus Philbin. Oh, wait, it's another General Mills title. Okay, that's not always a bad sign. It's from 2000. How could it not work? That's kinda weird.
Light Dog steers you clear of the worst hazards of the internet and gives you the right gear to explore the rest. With Light Dog, you can filter out content you don't want to see, giving you the peace of mind to learn, play, and connect with confidence. You can even customize Light Dog.
Okay, yeah, I see your point. This is nice and all, but I want to play the game that's on here, thank you. So let's go to that. Great. Wonderful. Fantastic. Fucking glorious. I love technology. I love computers so much.
Get 1 month of Light Dog's family-friendly internet service free with the offer on this CD.
This CD is also brought to you by Pfizer Animal Health, the maker of Revolution.
Oh look, what do you know? Product placement the video game. Oh, I'm sorry. Captain Crunch's Great Crunchling Rescue, a true classic among the other product placement the game games. Alright, here's how the game works. You choose among 3 types of Crunchlings to care and train for, so you can defeat these other guys in a competition that will determine whether or not the entire Crunchling species will continue to live. Not much of a difference between them visually, so I chose the girliest one, cause why not, and I also named it Scat, cause why not. The caring and training part consists of feeding the little bastard a bunch of Captain Crunch and playing these 3 minigames over and over and over and over again to build up their strength. One's a racing game where you have to jump over a bunch of obstacles to beat this backwards running turtle. Okay. Another's a really shoddy platformer where you have to jump your way to the top in the quickest amount of time. And the last one is this arcade shooter-like game where you have to destroy these rocks being thrown above you screen to screen, and you can easily cheese it by standing in the middle and spamming the space button. And that's all the good Captain has to offer. I imagine it doesn't take that long to beat, but after going through each minigame, I had to think to myself for a second. Do I really want to waste my time slogging through this piece of crap? Or go to the next CD-ROM? God, wait, never mind. Captain Crunch, please take me back. So this is a sampler containing a bunch of demos for Toy Story 2 related products. One of them being the Activity Center game that we couldn't get to work in the last part. Somehow, though, the demo in this sampler actually does work. So let's see what I was missing out on. Okay, it's a pretty simple minigame. Kind of like that one level in Donkey Kong, you know, the last one.
Aha! There's the command module.
Yeah, well, that was easy. Alright, what's next? Oh, that's it? Alright then, let's just try some of the other ones. Apparently the full version of the first Toy Story game is on here, so let's give that a shot. Okay, let's just try the actual Toy Story 2 game. Okay, so the Activity Center demo works, but none of the other ones will. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. This is the same company that shat out Disney Plus. Oh boy, what could be next? Ooh, Leap Ahead Kindergarten by the Learning Company. Yay! Oh, it also doesn't work. Yay! Turn the page and what do we get? Kid Picks Activity Center. Yes! Yes! Merry Christmas! Oh, Broderbund. Huh. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Let's just see if it will... Well, let's just rummage through the files again, because I have no idea what the hell this thing is. Okay, that didn't help. Let's just look up some footage. Oh. It's just another drawing studio. Okay, yeah, no thanks. I can't sell those fucking Disney drawings I made, so,
Who don't want it?
And right next to that is yet another educational holy shit, it's an actual game! This is a little game by Rage Software, a company that sounds exactly like one of those popular 90s PC developers that would go on to make classic games and are now in prison by corporate publishers. You know, Raven Software, id Software, there's probably another software out there that I'm forgetting. But contrary to those teams, Rage didn't really make anything notable, unless you're really into soccer games. They did make the console ports for that weird-ass Aerosmith rail shooter Revolution X, as well as the Sega Saturn port for Doom. I mean, it's something. Okay, install was fine, and... Alright, you know what? I would get mad, but check Steam, and they have it for $2. Sold! So this here is a run and gun game where you go through and shoot up a bunch of aliens, and that's pretty much it. No nonsense arcade style running and gunning, complete with lives and continues as well. I never got very far into this one as a kid, but I liked it regardless, especially with all the glorious violence. Y'all have Doom or Mortal Kombat or GTA as your super violent game you're not supposed to be playing when you're young. I had Expendable. And playing it now, yeah, it does the running and gunning job well, and looks damn good for a 20-year-old game. It even has bump mapping. Not sure where, but it says it's there. Too bad the controls are a complete mess. I tried with a keyboard first, sans mouse, and damn this was stiff. Also, the default weapon forced me to continuously spam the spacebar to get a halfway decent rate of fire, and my fingers felt like they were gonna fall off halfway through the first level. I then tried my Xbox One controller as a joke, but it actually recognized it, so I figured why not. And... okay, look. Horror games? Sure. Platformers? I guess. Stealth games? Why not? But who had the bright idea to put tank controls for a goddamn run and gun? Furthermore, who decided to do that and then crank up the sensitivity to max so it feels like I'm controlling that submarine from that Sesame Street game? And with the aiming being as stiff as a brick along with limited power-ups and lives, this makes the game almost unplayable in this state. Honestly, for $3 you could do worse, but you could also do far better. What a shame. At least this intro is still pretty funny. And the last offering for the CD pack is... oh, thank God, another actual game. Descent, Free Space, Darkness Rising. And praise the Lord, installed with no issue. Hallelujah. Oh, sing hallelujah. Thank you, Volition. Yes, that Volition. This was an offshoot of their Descent series, which was their Blood, or Heretic, i.e. that one Doom-like FPS they made, and luckily wasn't their Redneck Rampage or Strive, because they would obviously survive the early 2000s. This is a space simulation where you play as a space pilot going on a bunch of space missions and engaging in epic space combat against space monsters, or something. This intro cinematic is also quite good for 1998, and drew me in, as this main dude is pretty convincing for someone who's about to get blown up.
Oh God, they're following me! Mayday! This is Lieutenant Ash on Terran Patrol, Wing Gamma, 3-9, reporting, taking heavy damage, requesting immediate fighter cover and rescue. Come in, anybody!
This lady, on the other hand...
we were in a skirmish with a student patrol, and they just came out of nowhere and killed everyone!
Who came out of nowhere, pilot?
But never mind that, let's get to some space shooting. Any day now.
The first function you will learn is targeting.
Oh, okay, it's starting, but I don't see anything. Let's just restart it and maybe check the settings and... what the hell? I thought this was gonna work. Okay, let's just try all tabbing out of it and then back in and... okay, now it works. I think it works? Oh god, oh, these controls are just all over the place. Time to do some rebinding. You gotta be kidding. Alright, fuck this. There's gotta be another way to play... what? The Great War? What the hell is this supposed to... oh. God, the 90s were weird. Anyway, after buying and installing the full version, watching that poor sucker get blown up again, and having the ability to rebind the controls, the space shooting can begin. And despite the 50,000 commands here being kind of intimidating and the tutorials being a bit of a mess, it's not really that complicated. Target your enemy, make sure you don't run into them, hold down the mouse button until you or one of your comrades make it blow up, repeat until the game's over. There's a bunch of secondary stuff they can go over and do if you want to be the most effective fighter space pilot out there. You can even dish out commands to reinforcements or other team members, and it does work quite well, but I got by with pew 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 just fine. So yeah, the game it's not really my thing, but it's not bad. I'm pretty sure anyone could get into it. It's just these missions are kind of boring, and the controlling the game is kind of a nightmare, and I think the space monkey's gonna come get me, mother. So yeah, that CD pack was a pretty big disappointment. I guess that's all the games though. But what could this be? Yeah, we still got 3 more games to look at, so we can finally finish up this months-long project. And they're games from me childhood that I've actually never tried to play until now. Yeah. First up is another all-time classic, I think, the original Sims game. Let's add a few more qualifiers for this one too. This is my brother's game, and he got it for Christmas at some point this decade. Not last decade. But it landed in this pile, so F it, let's give it a shot. Great. And no, rebooting didn't do shit. Looking up a solution online, it seems like this is yet another victim of EA's early anti-piracy wackadoodie-cackadoodie. But it's even worse here, because unlike the Harry Potter games, I can't even install the thing. And I couldn't find any workarounds either. Though this one dude suggested copying the files from the disk and putting it directly onto the computer. Oh, okay then, silly me, I don't know why I didn't think of that. I'll just bring these files over to this folder and... oh, look at that, and I still have to install it. And oh, look at that. Fuck you, EA! And the last 2 ones here are still shrink wrapped. Yep, I've never taken them off in the decade plus I've had them. Starting off with Finding Nemo. Man, can you imagine how much something like this must be worth with this on? So this is based off the movie of the same name, which is another one of my favorite Pixar films, and it's another No Wonder title. It's quite different from the other games of theirs we've looked at though. Instead of sloppy 3D platforming with a super rushed and condensed retelling of whatever film it's based on, what we have here is a basic ass point and click game with a super rushed and condensed retelling of Finding Nemo. Well, it's different for them. It's all pre-rendered too, and it kinda reminds me of I Spy Fantasy but with slightly smoother animation. It has another highlights reel structure where you switch between Marvin and Nemo to do their respective point and clicking stuff, which is a neat idea, but there isn't much more to that besides switching between the characters. As for the point and clicking, it's also fine, works okay. Certainly reminds me a lot of Freddi Fish, which I'm pretty sure is what they were trying to do here. I can appreciate that to a point, but here's the issue. Freddi Fish looks a million times better and didn't force me to play a bunch of mind-numbingly dull minigames, including 3 variations of Simon Fecking Says, my favorite game in the world. I did play through all of it though, and it wasn't just because it was only an hour long. Interspersed between the point and clicking and the minigame sequences were super compressed clips from the film, like what they did with Scream Island, except this time, the game actually follows the same plot as the film, so these actually fit. And again, I like Finding Nemo, so it was nice to watch this stuff in between the monotony. There was one odd quirk with these cutscenes, though.
You're wasting my time. I have to find my son. Hello? 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 Hello?
Man, if the Fairly Odd Gamer was right about one thing, it's that this voice don't sound right. Shout out to the Fairly Odd Gamer, by the way. He does good stuff.
Hello?
Overall, this is a fine outing for No Wonder. Better than Brother Bear, to be sure. I probably would have loved the hell out of it if Kid Me had achieved the strength to open the plastic foil, but I was dummy weak back then and had to wait until me big boy muscles formed. It wasn't worth it. And finally, last but not least, the end, is Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, based off the film of the same name, which I liked, also based off the book series that I also liked. Coincidentally, this was made by No Wonder too, so maybe we'll end this series off with a bang.
Klaus needs assistance. Perhaps I can invent something to help him out.
Winnie, Winnie, what?
Not sure if it was burnout, apathy, or both, but I was pretty down in the middle with this title. Not too many standout qualities, not too many horrible things going on either. It was just average. You play as the 3 Baudelaire children as they go around escaping the grasp of Count Olaf and his cronies, who just want the money their deceased parents left behind for them. I will say this has the best narrative of any No Wonder licensed game, in that the necessary story beats connect with each other in a manner that actually makes sense, so if I hadn't seen the film or read the books, I could still understand what's going on. It's just a shame the presentation doesn't complement that. All the cutscenes are still rigid as hell, the character models barely look better than the ones in the Harry Potter games, and while they got some of the people from the film to reprise their roles, well, you tell me, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much of a shit do you think they gave during those recording sessions?
I'm almost positive it's behind this door. It's locked, but I bet that lever would open the door, but it's out of reach.
I've got an idea. I bet Justice Strauss would have a judge's gavel and some scales. I could also use a spring and something long and rope-like.
Gameplay-wise, it arbitrarily switches between one of the children, depending on the situation, while arbitrarily requiring the need for Violet to make a bunch of inventions in order to progress, so it all amounts to a linear string of fetch quests, simple platforming, and pathetically easy combat. It's at least not the weird hybrid of open linear that kinda ruined the first Harry Potter game, but I still wasn't impressed. Like I've said a bajillion times in this series, and what's indicative of most licensed games in the 2000s, emphasis on most, it works, but doesn't do much beyond that. What I really didn't care for were the clunky controls, especially how picking up items involves not just walking over it, but awkwardly clicking on the item when the game deems that you're close enough to it. I did go out of my way to find as many secrets as I could just for fun, but there weren't no chests here, so my interest could only be held for so long. Credit where credit is due, though. The game has one of the most ridiculous excuses for a final boss sequence I've seen in quite some time. It's that one part at the end of the first book and the film where the bookworm kid needs to burn the marriage certificate, and for some bizarre reason, they decided to adapt that sequence by making Olaf and his cronies prance around the stage and then have me burn the fuck out of whoever's holding the certificate when they stop moving. To be fair, that's not the actual final boss, but I honestly would have respected the game more if it just ended after that part so it could be the only game in existence where the final boss is musical chairs. All of this is in contrast with how the game constantly says that these kids are miserable and sad and unfortunate and blah 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 blah. I can't really feel the same way when this shit is happening on screen at the same time. You can only do so much when covering the first 3 books, when the real fucked up and miserable shit happens in the later volumes, especially 7. But why am I even giving this thing much thought? Yeah, I like Chamber of Secrets, but all of No Wonders games are nothing but junk food time wasters with nothing interesting beyond that. Fitting that this is the last game we covered in this series, because this is the last game that No Wonder made before they were absorbed into that messy Foundation 9 conglomerate. What a complete waste. And that's it. That's all the PC games I played during me childhood. At least all the ones that worked. It's been more than 3 goddamn months since I started making this series, and I thought it was gonna be easy. Just play a bunch of games and write about it. It's so simple, you dumb fuck. Yeah, no, 60 plus games, a good chunk of them needing build-up or having a bunch of interesting qualities about them, that takes time to make. And there were plenty of points, especially when the technical issues started happening, where I was just like, this is such a waste of time. Why am I doing this? I could be playing games or making sick beats. But overall, made me feel wistful. It reminded me of a simpler time where I didn't know anything about this stupid world. All I cared was getting to the championship in backyard baseball and making Pablo hit another home run. Sometimes I just long for those days. And then I remember Playground Sports exists. Alley 19 Bowling, and Nickelodeon Party Blast, and Brother Bear, and a bunch of games that don't work. Well, I still have the CD reader in case I ever want to play these games again. He's a weirdo. Look at him. Nope. I'd stay. Fine. Don't love me. Don't love me like the little furball you are, you little bastard.